The story kicks off in a dark alley where two guys are just sitting around, and one of them casually spits on the ground. Right after, our boy walks past them, thinking about how his neighborhood is so loud and dirty every single day. On top of that, his home is just a tiny 5-pyong rooftop room. And this is our protagonist, Bong Ju-hyeok, who's having ramen for dinner, again tonight. The reason he works so hard but never saves any money is because of a massive debt he has to pay off, even if it means living in poverty. While slurping his noodles, he thinks about how he has no special skills or a bright future ahead of him. But as he was lamenting his mediocre life, a blue screen just pops up right in front of his face. With his eyes glowing blue, our hero is in total shock, noodles still hanging from his mouth. He gets so spooked that he ends up spitting out all the food he was eating. Still confused by the whole situation, our boy wonders what an awakening even is. An awakening is like a blessing, and if you play your cards right, you can completely turn your life around. However, you can only enjoy that luck if you manage to stay alive, because entering the tower is seriously dangerous. Inside, you can get torn to shreds by terrifying monsters, or you could freeze or burn to a crisp in extreme environments. Getting taken out by poison is also one of the available options. And of course, getting flattened by a trap, and so on, which is a bit of a problem, because our hero usually avoids confrontation if possible. He steers clear of dangerous situations and has lived like that for 25 years. That's why he wonders if this is a real awakening or if he was just tired and dozed off. So to clear things up, he decides to shout out loud for his status window, and on his status screen it says his affiliation is black and his trait is max level summoning. With that, Bong Ju-hyeok realizes it wasn't a dream and starts wondering about his new summoning ability. Turns out, every awakened person gets a special ability known as a trait, and the types vary a lot, from using swords and shields to growing giant or healing wounds. Among all of them, the summoning trait allows the use of beings like spirits and phantasmal beasts. Basically, it's an ability that lets you use specific types of summoned creatures. Our boy then wonders what kind of summoner he is and decides to test out a cool-looking skill. So he holds out his hand and tries to use his summoning ability for the first time. But he feels a little awkward and decides to try the random summon, which seems easier. However, nothing happens, and our protagonist just stands there with a totally confused look on his face. A moment later, he scratches his head and remembers you can't use abilities outside the tower. That's because a player's abilities, including their skills, are only valid inside the tower. The only exception is the status window. Outside the tower, a player is no different from a normal person. Our boy feels like a total idiot, since this is common sense if you just look it up online. So he gives up on the idea, since a skill shouldn't work outside the tower anyway. But suddenly, a blue screen appears in front of him, initiating the random summon. Bong Ju-hyeok's eye starts glowing, and he's completely baffled by the situation. And a large purple magic circle appears in front of the door of his tiny room. From inside that portal, a mysterious man with reddish hair begins to float out. Our hero's jaw drops as he wonders why his skill actually worked. And to our hero's surprise, the summoned creature is a person who greets him with a smile. Bong Ju-hyeok can't believe the summon worked outside the tower, and on top of that, brought a human being. Suddenly, John Corsack starts sniffing the air with a very serious expression. But it was just the smell of ramen, and he gets all excited, asking for a little bite. Our protagonist just watches as the guy chows down on his noodles, thinking he just summoned some kind of freeloader. And the guy eats with so much gusto that he slurps up all the noodles in one go. Afterwards, he complains that the ramen is spicy, but our hero finds that odd because it was a mild flavor. Putting that aside, our protagonist wonders how the skill worked and why it summoned a human. So he opens the status window and discovers he can summon humans of various different ranks. On top of that, these ranks work just like one of those gacha games, where you need a lot of luck. Right after, a new notification pops up about the 3 principles of the summoned. The first is to protect the summoner, the second is to obey, and the third states that protection always comes first. Meanwhile, the guy drinks all the broth, and Bong Ju-hyeok thinks that absolute obedience sounds pretty sweet, and the catalog reveals that the summon's name is John Corsack, an SR rank super rare assassin. Suddenly, a flood of information about John rushes into our boy's head, giving him a headache. His eyes glow blue as he starts having a strange vision. In this vision, he sees a person falling from a very high place into a purple portal. The person continues to fall headfirst towards a small black dot way down below. But John Corsac dashes at high speed towards the falling guy. And the boy in the air looks surprised to see that someone is coming to save him. Inside the vision, our hero sees John Corsac leaping into the middle of several enemies, and he realizes he's watching the assassin's past as he fights bravely. But after the fight, he picks up a red ribbon and prepares for something. Then he makes a seriously bizarre gift, which is exactly why people called him a psycho. With a strange smile on his face, he looks very proud of what he's done. The vision then shifts to a dark mansion where his only failure occurred. Inside, the assassination target was lying peacefully in bed. However, when he attacks, his target defends with incredible speed, because the target was actually the strongest swordmaster in the entire empire. And this is Corsac's last memory, being defeated on his final mission. Back in reality, Corsac asks what he was thinking, getting right up in his face. The shock is so great that our protagonist loses his balance and falls backward onto the floor. Still scared, he remembers that the summoned must have absolute obedience, so he takes a deep breath to calm down and decides to test this so-called rule. He orders Corsac to put away the ramen pot and clean the table immediately. Our hero is surprised by his speed and by the fact that he doesn't complain one bit. He really does everything Bong Ju-hyeok says without questioning it a single time. Corsac says that obedience is mandatory, and our boy decides to ask for something ridiculous. Then, with a serious face, he tells the assassin to make a specific noise, and that was for him to make a sound as if he were a dog. Our hero feels awkward and wonders if he went too far with his request. But to his surprise, Corsac starts acting like a super happy, obedient puppy. With a thumbs up, our boy confirms that this absolute obedience thing is the real deal. Suddenly, someone starts banging loudly on the door, putting both of them on alert. A voice from outside shouts for him, and our hero remembers he forgot to pay the interest on his debt. He quickly tells Mr. Corsac to get up, because the situation just got serious. He remembers borrowing 10 million won from a private loan shark. The money went to his father's surgery and his younger brother's college tuition. Even though he's already paid 5 million in interest, the principal debt is still the same as before. Meanwhile, the loan shark keeps shouting for him to open the door and check if he's still kicking. Seeing his master worried, Corsac offers to handle the problem his way. Desperate, our hero tells him to hide in the bathroom and not make a sound. As soon as he opens the door, the loan shark grabs him by the collar with a lot of force. The guy asks if he's okay, because he got worried about the late payment. He then suggests that if things get tight, our hero could just sell an organ, and his partner chimes in that the younger brother could also fetch a good price. Hearing this, rage fills Bong Ju-hyeok, and his expression changes instantly. The loan shark notices his glare and asks if he's thinking about fighting back. But our protagonist forces a smile and says he would never do something like that. The guy leaves but warns him to be careful if he doesn't want to disappear off the map. After the guys leave, Corsac comes out of the bathroom, and our hero praises how quiet he was. After such a crazy day, he feels exhausted and wonders if he really needs to climb the tower. Money is great, but he thinks he's too much of a chicken to face the dangers of that place. Not knowing what to do, he asks Corsac, who says he can be dismissed if he wants. But right after, the assassin raises his hand and asks with a smile if he can watch a little TV. Our boy finds it strange but allows it, and Corsac thanks him, saying he's going to watch a drama. Later, while our protagonist sleeps, the assassin stands guard, watching television. Even though he's a summon, having someone around doesn't seem so bad to our hero. In fact, it's kind of comforting, and he's able to relax a bit more. As for Corsac, he watches the light from the TV and thinks about how he's always worked alone until now. The light reflects on his face as he seems to be making an important decision. The next day, the alarm goes off at 8 in the morning, and our hero sleepily turns it off. He wakes up and realizes Corsac is gone, wondering if he was dismissed. A system window confirms that the 6-hour manifestation has ended, so he stretches and gets ready to go to work while the TV announces a news story. The news is about a bizarre incident at the Smile Cash Loan Shark Agency. Our boy stops what he's doing because he recognizes the name of that place. The TV reports that 3 victims were found and their heads had been removed. And the most shocking part is that the heads were decorated with red ribbons. He immediately remembers the vision and realizes it was the work of John Corsack. Our hero then remembers Corsack's proud smile, saluting him like a loyal soldier. And now he's screaming in despair because the whole comforting idea was a joke, and he's summoned a psycho killer. The news on TV shows the gruesome scene of what happened at the Smile Cash Agency. And several macabre details are shown, like the hand of one of the victims on the floor. On top of that, the loan sharks' heads were found decorated with red ribbons. Seeing this, our protagonist goes into a full-blown panic because he knows who's to blame. While he's freaking out at the convenience store, someone calls him from behind. And he has a bizarre vision of the headless loan shark, asking him to pay his tab. Our boy is so shocked that his eyes go wide in an instant. The vision continues with the other heads on the shelf, as if they were products for sale. The terror is so intense that he screams and falls backward, knocking things over in the store. The clerk comes over and asks if he's okay after all the commotion. He quickly apologizes and runs out of the store, completely embarrassed. Outside, he decides he's in no condition to work and is going to take the day off. Our hero starts thinking about the people who are gone and feels guilty about everything. Walking alone down the street, he questions whether all of this is really his fault. Finally, he returns to his tiny room to try and calm down a bit. He opens the status screen and confirms that Corsack won't hurt him, but it's still terrifying. Then he reaches out his hand and prepares to use the designated summon for the first time. But to his surprise, something interrupts him, and our boy is left totally confused. It turns out a system screen is asking him to give a satisfaction rating for the summoned being. Furious, he gives just 1 star because the guy disobeyed his order to only watch TV. He wanted to give just 1 star, but in the end, he changes his mind. Our boy thinks he can't be that cruel and decides to give a better score. The final rating is 3 stars because he remembers how his mom used to suffer from low ratings at her job. Right after, John Corsack is summoned again with a smile and a shout of loyalty. He thanks him for the 3 stars, and our hero wonders if this innocent-looking guy really did. Without beating around the bush, our protagonist asks if he was responsible for what happened to the loan sharks. Corsack confirms everything with a smile, saying he took care of them before being dismissed. With that, our boy panics because he's standing in front of a real-life assassin. He tries to calm himself down by remembering that at least the summon won't hurt him. So he asks how the assassin found the office and learns about a tracking mark. Our hero is confused about this mark and asks why he went to such lengths. Corsack explains that they were a threat and it was better to deal with the problem early. But all of this was because of the 3rd law of the summoned, which he followed to the letter. The law states that protecting the summoner is the highest priority, above any other order. Our hero understands that if he asked to be finished off, Corsack wouldn't obey. However, he says there was no real threat and that the judgment was made on his own. Corsack retorts that it was a reasonable judgment, and our boy calls him a psycho. He apologizes right away, but the assassin says he's used to hearing that. Our protagonist understands the logic, but realizes how dangerous this could be, and he starts to imagine what would happen if he bumped into some big guy on the street. He imagines some guy just jokingly threatening him on the street, but in Corsack's interpretation, the result would be a gift-wrapped head. Our hero is terrified by the idea and decides to put a stop to this. To his surprise, the assassin kneels and apologizes on the spot. Our boy then forbids him from acting on his own unless there's a real direct threat, and Corsack promises with a shout that he will judge the situation very carefully. The response is pretty energetic, but our hero sends him back for now. Before leaving, the assassin turns around and asks an important question. He questions why our protagonist hasn't decided to climb the tower yet. The question catches our boy completely off guard. He wasn't expecting that. He clenches his fist and thinks that climbing the tower is a once-in-a-lifetime chance. However, he's terrified of facing the monsters and dangers inside, so he asks if Corsack has ever had another summoner like him before. The assassin confirms with a smile that he has served someone else. Our hero feels ashamed for not having the courage to risk his life, and he thinks he's a pathetic coward for being so afraid of everything. But suddenly, Corsac praises him, saying he's the best summoner of all. He explains that a summoner's greatest virtue is putting safety first, because a brave summoner is a dangerous one, and if he gets taken out, the summon can't leave. Finally, he promises to do all the dirty work and asks our hero to just live well. The next day, our hero wakes up completely drained after a rough night's sleep. He then decides to forget about the tower and just live happily, since his debt is gone. Besides, he's going to find a normal job and live safely and diligently. But suddenly, his phone starts ringing and he pulls it from his back pocket. It was his dad, calling to see how he was doing and to talk about his rehab. However, the news was bad, as his mom had just been laid off from her job. Our boy is shocked by the news and hangs up, not knowing what to do. He just stands there for a while, processing everything he just heard from his dad. After a lot of thought, our protagonist decides to enter the tower after all. So he decides he'll just take a quick peek. And if it's too dangerous, he'll leave immediately, but before he goes, he thinks that he doesn't need to summon that psycho Corsac again. He then tries his luck with the random summon, dreaming of a legendary rank. However, the system informs him that the random summon is on cooldown for a month. With no other option, he ends up summoning Corsac, who thanks him for the 5 stars. Our hero feels awkward and wonders if the assassin knows he just tried to replace him. With newfound courage, he announces that he's going to enter the tower, and Corsac calls him brave. Corsac then throws away our boy's work tools and promises to be his hunting dog. With a confident smile, Corsac says he'll take care of everything and that our hero shouldn't lift a finger in there. Soon after, a blue screen appears asking if they want to enter the Dark Tower of Korea. Without even asking, Corsac accepts immediately and gives an OK signal to the system. So they are pulled inside the tower while our boy screams in despair. They are taken through a high-speed digital tunnel, and our protagonist gets completely nauseous from the crazy trip. Corsac holds on tight as they continue to fall. Finally, they arrive, and our boy realizes he's inside the Dark Tower. The first floor is basically a complete desert. That's why he feels motion sickness and almost throws everything up. Then Corsac helps him recover with a pat on the back. Then the assassin asks our hero to follow him with a smile. Suddenly, a blue screen alerts you that your physical and combat skills are ready. With this, Bong Ju-hyeok feels that he is stronger even though he is level 1. The first floor's mission is to defeat 5 tough-skinned larvae in 2 hours. He did his research beforehand and knows that the first floor is a test of skill, and other players take 30 minutes to defeat just 1 larva. Despite this, our hero clenches his fist because now he's a player too. So he decides to try and catch one on his own, and Corsac gets very worried. He carefully approaches one of the creatures that is standing still on the ground. To fight, he thinks he needs to borrow a weapon from Corsac, but the larva suddenly stands up and turns towards him. It then reveals a bizarre shape with a green glow inside. Our boy is shocked and speechless at the monster's appearance. Terrified, our hero gives up immediately and asks Mr. Corsac for help. The assassin is overjoyed with the decision and gives an enthusiastic thumbs up. Without wasting any time, he runs at high speed towards the monster. With just one blow, he destroys the larva in an explosion of green goo. Then he tells our boy to move away and destroys the other larvae as well. With a wicked grin, he prepares his energy claws for the final attack. Then he unleashes a barrage of energy blades toward the enemies. The pieces of the larvae begin to fall from the sky after being hit. He uses an explosion ability and finishes off all remaining creatures. Our protagonist is speechless, for he has never seen so much power in his life. The creatures' bodies turn to dust and disappear, for it was an instant slaughter. With this, he levels up and earns an S++ rank, making him extremely happy. But what he didn't know was that his achievement had attracted a lot of attention. A woman at the gym also receives notification of his achievement, just like some random guy who was chilling at a nightclub. In fact, the news spread throughout the country in the blink of an eye, and all the South Korean players received the same warning about him. Soon after, they are teleported back to our hero's small room. Our boy looks at his cell phone and is shocked because everything only took 5 minutes. Corsac congratulates him on the good work with a very proud smile. Our boy says he didn't do anything, but Corsac says it was the right thing to do. Furthermore, he thinks it was too easy and looks at his rewards on the table. He picks up the magic stone and is surprised because it's the first time he's seen a real one. The magic stone is an important resource and is currently worth 50,000 won. 20 years have passed since the Dark Towers appeared around the world. And that's why most people already know the basics about them. But he wonders what the platinum emblem is, as he has never heard of it. Putting that aside, he celebrates having won money, and Corsac goes to watch TV. To celebrate, he orders a fancy meal and invites Corsac to eat with him. The assassin gets all excited by the smell of the food and prepares for the feast. Corsac smells chili peppers, and our hero realizes he can't stand anything spicy. With a smile on his face, he thanks them and begins to eat with great gusto. While eating, our protagonist asks Corsac about his way of speaking. He explains that he picked up the habit from his former summoner, with whom he spent a lot of time. Our boy jokes about being influenced by an ex, and they start laughing together. After eating, Corsac continues devouring the food, super happy. And our hero now understands that the tower isn't so dangerous after all. With all this, he realizes that conquering the tower is entirely possible. The next morning, he wakes up with a newfound determination in his eyes. That's why he sets up a routine to work during the day and train at night. He changes his routine and decides to no longer work during the day to focus on the tower with John Corsac. Our boy then tests his obedience and orders him to dance, which makes Corsac happy with the 5 stars. Bong Ju-hyeok wonders if the satisfaction rating is really that important. Corsac explains that better grades bring more benefits such as increased summoning time and rank boost. Soon after, the two enter the second floor of the Dark Tower for the next challenge. The new mission is to defeat 10 of the fastest larvae in less than 2 hours. Our protagonist realizes that this walk is more difficult because the creatures move a lot, but Corsac reassures him, saying there won't be time to think about what to do. He assures you he'll finish it all in just 3 minutes and promises to take you home soon. Then, with immense power, he prepares to attack all the monsters at once. Our hero shouts that they're going to eat chicken later, and Corsac thanks him excitedly. With a confident smile, he unleashes all his energy for the attack, and in the blink of an eye, all the larvae are completely destroyed by it. Our boy is shocked by the scene and receives another S++ rank reward. He finds everything very easy and quick, and thinks he can do it before his work starts. Immediately afterwards, they enter the 3rd floor, and their mission is to defeat 10 ice larvae. Corsac destroys them all again with absurd ease. The assassin is very proud of his flawless work, and after the mission's success, the two celebrate with a high five. With shining eyes, our protagonist realizes how easy the tower has become. His status screen shows that he is at level 6 and can summon 2 creatures at the same time. This shocks him because it means he can bring someone else to the tower with him, and Corsac is already super strong. Furthermore, the rewards for S rank are very good, and he already has several. With one more ally, he would feel much more secure in the battles to come. However, the random summon has been on cooldown for over 20 days, and he needs to wait. So for now, he and Corsac will continue climbing the tower and breaking records. Meanwhile, the atmosphere is very tense in the awakened administration. A man and a woman are in a meeting room with their boss. The man wonders when the announcement will play again today, and the woman notices that he's anxious about it, which irritates him greatly. This is team leader Jeon Gwang-il and vice director Lee Min-hye. She then confirms that a new S-rank advertisement has appeared on the 6th floor. The leader is shocked because the Dark Tower advertisements haven't stopped appearing lately, and they all belong to the same person who is cleaning the floors in order. If this player continues like this and clears all floors with an S rank, then more. Director Park Yong-soo slams his hand on the table because this would change everything they know. He explains that until now, Korea's record was only rank A, and they didn't even know there was a higher rank. Other countries may try to steal this talented player for themselves. Therefore, the director orders them to find this player immediately. 2 days later, Corsac washes the dishes and says they're going to the 8th floor. Our hero watches Corsac cleaning and thinks that everything is quite peaceful up to the 10th floor. Next, they enter a foggy forest for the next challenge. The mission on the 8th floor is to defeat 10 warrior frogs who appear ready to attack. One of the frogs attacks with its long purple tongue very quickly, but a blade of blue energy emerges from nowhere to cut through the attack. And as always, Corsac finishes off all the monsters and gets yet another S+ reward. Back home, the assassin congratulates our hero, who says he did nothing. Happy with the result, he decides to give Corsac a gift as a thank you. So he offers the assassin some money to go out and have some fun. However, Corsac refuses and says he will stay home watching TV so as not to leave his master alone. Our boy then suggests ordering chicken, and Corsac gets super excited about the idea. While ordering the food, he remembers that the killer doesn't like spicy food and decides to check the prizes. The new reward is a healing potion, and he decides he's going to give it to Corsac. Furthermore, he has already accumulated 1,800,000 won in magic stones and is thinking of selling them. On the 10th day of climbing, he is exhausted and thinking about quitting his part-time job. The 9th floor was also super easy, and the S+ rewards are an amazing bonus. With a smile, he toasts his partner and even forgets that he summoned a crazy assassin. Because of the high notes, Corsac's manifestation time increases by 1 hour. The assassin thanks him by making a heart with his hands and promises to take care of everything. Finally, they enter the 10th floor, and our hero feels his body getting stronger. He feels a force overflowing from his body and mana stirring within him. And with all this power, our hero is likened to an untamed wild horse. Therefore, he informs Corsac that he will begin assisting in battles from now on. But the assassin absolutely refuses because he cannot let his master get hurt. Our protagonist insists that this time he needs to fight alongside the assassin. Suddenly, a giant, strange eye appears from behind a tree, watching them, and the monster on the 10th floor is a giant, very scary green praying mantis. Our boy is terrified and wonders how the other players defeated it. However, Corsac feels that fighting an insect wounds his human pride. So our protagonist becomes a cheerleader and orders the assassin to finish off the creature. The praying mantis attacks with its sharp claws in a very quick movement. But Corsac dodges in midair with great ease and prepares his counterattack. With a serious look, he focuses all his energy into his blue blades, and with several power cuts, he blows the monster to shreds in midair. Thus, the mission is successfully completed, and they leave the tower once again. With this, he gains another kilogram of magic stones, totaling 5.5 kilograms. Furthermore, he had already received a benefit for having 5 platinum emblems, and now, with 10 emblems accumulated, he receives a new benefit and becomes quite curious. The system then reveals that it can copy an ability from its summon. Before he can choose, Corsac says he must learn the shadow step. Our hero asks the reason, and Corsac says that this is the best skill for escaping. Our boy gets offended and wonders if he looks like someone who would abandon others to survive. Even so, he chooses shadow step, and the ability is recorded in his status. He decides to test the new skill to see if it works outside the tower, but nothing happens. Exhausted, he falls to the ground and complains that it didn't work, even though the summoning was successful. On the 11th day of climbing, our hero makes an important call, clearly nervous. He calls the awakened administration and introduces himself, saying that he has awakened. The attendant congratulates him and asks if she can send a support team to his home. After giving him the address, he becomes exhausted because he only called to sell his magic stones. Meanwhile, Vice Principal Lee Mina arrives in a black car in front of the building. Jung Gwang-il asks about the newly awakened one, but she confirms that it's not the S-rank guy anymore. Then she mentions that a new wake-up call has come in and invites him to come along. Determined, he says they need to go and recruit the player for the elite team at any cost. Meanwhile, our protagonist frantically cleans his small room to receive the visitor. Suddenly, someone knocks on the door, and our hero gets super tense because they've arrived. He opens the door and invites Jung Gwang-il and Lee Mina inside, apologizing for the mess. The team leader introduces the vice principal, and our boy becomes even more nervous in her presence. Suddenly, Lee Mina gets very close to his face, leaving him completely embarrassed. With an intense look, she says that he's the S-rank guy, leaving him in shock. She holds him and asks again if he's the top-ranked S guy. Our boy gets scared by how close she is and pushes her away. Completely confused, he wonders if there is an identification method he doesn't know about. For now, he decides to deny everything and try to act as naturally as possible, pretending to be a robot. He says it's not him with a very forced laugh. But Lee Min-ah realizes immediately that he is blatantly lying. Then John Gwang-il reprimands her for investigating people, and she apologizes. They apologize, and our hero understands that it was all just a test. Soon after, an introductory video begins featuring a cute mascot named Tabi. The mascot explains that the Dark Tower appeared all over the world 20 years ago, but no one could get close because an invisible barrier destroyed everything. The answer to the mystery of the tower came with the emergence of the players. Outside the tower, they are normal, but inside they gain powers and contribute to the economy. However, if the tower is not conquered, a countdown to collapse is activated. And if the countdown comes to an end, the tower collapses, as happened in India 3 years ago. Each country has 1 to 3 towers, and Korea thankfully only has 1. Korea's progress is going well, and it's the second best record after the US. Therefore, the players are seen as heroes who explore the tower for humanity. So Tabi invites newly awakened players to register as official players. The video ends, and John Gwang-il prepares to ask some verification questions. She holds him and asks again if he's the top-ranked S-rank guy. Our boy gets scared by how close she is and pushes her away. Completely confused, he wonders if there is an identification method he doesn't know about. For now, he decides to deny everything and try to act as naturally as possible, pretending to be a robot. He says it's not him with a very forced laugh. But Lee Min-ah realizes immediately that he is blatantly lying. Then Jeong Gwang-il reprimands her for investigating people, and she apologizes. They apologize, and our hero understands that it was all just a test. Soon after, an introductory video begins featuring a cute mascot named Tabi. The mascot explains that the Dark Tower appeared all over the world 20 years ago, but no one could get close because an invisible barrier destroyed everything. The answer to the mystery of the tower came with the emergence of the players. Outside the tower, they are normal, but inside they gain powers and contribute to the economy. However, if the tower is not conquered, a countdown to collapse is activated. And if the countdown comes to an end, the tower collapses, as happened in India 3 years ago. Each country has 1 to 3 towers, and Korea thankfully only has 1. Korea's progress is going well, and it's the second best record after the US. Therefore, the players are seen as heroes who explore the tower for humanity. So Tabi invites newly awakened players to register as official players. The video ends, and John Gwang-il prepares to ask some verification questions. John Gwang-il respects our boy's decision, who awkwardly thanks him. Then he asks our hero to enter the tower to confirm that he has awakened. Furthermore, he suggests cleaning a floor, and our boy understands the intention. He agrees but warns that it will take almost 2 hours, so as not to arouse suspicion. With a smile, Lee Min-ah says that it's no problem, and that they will wait as long as it takes. Therefore, our protagonist gets up and prepares to enter the tower. He says goodbye, offers them drinks while they wait, and goes to his room. Immediately afterwards, he is teleported away, leaving the two of them alone in the room. Jeong Gwang-il confirms that he has woken up and asks Lee Min-ah for her opinion. She thinks he has no talent, and that he'll give up on the 11th floor, because the test is to confront the long-tailed tunnel centipede, and the mission is to kill 100 of them, which would be impossible for someone who is afraid. That's why she's sure he'll abandon the mission, and Jeong Gwang-il agrees. Disappointed, he decides he's going to call the principal and give him the bad news. Meanwhile, in the tower, our hero summons his companion, who appears in a flash of light. Korsak bows and expresses gratitude for having been summoned by the master. The mission is to defeat 100 centipedes, and our boy is disgusted by the idea, but he asks Korsak to hunt slowly for more than an hour so as not to break the record. The assassin understands immediately and gives a thumbs up because he knows they're being watched. With a wicked grin, our hero thinks he's going to fool everyone with a bad record. Korsak starts fighting, but asks if he's going too fast for the boss's liking. Then our boy yells at him to slow down, and the killer obeys immediately. This significantly slows down the pace of the hunt, and our hero becomes more relaxed. He even climbs on top of a dead centipede to watch the fight from a prime spot. But suddenly our protagonist becomes terrified by something that happened. He is surrounded by the creatures, and his body freezes in fear, unable to move. Corsac immediately realizes his master is in danger and rushes to help. He shouts that he will take care of everything and advances with his energy blades. In a fit of rage, he destroys all the centipedes that dared to attack their summoner. The blue energy attack tears the monsters to pieces in the blink of an eye. Our hero is safe but yells at Corsac to slow down because he went too fast. He complains that the killer ended everything way before the agreed-upon time. However, Corsac refuses, saying that his master's life is the highest priority. Our boy is in despair because he knows his plan has fallen apart, and a blue screen confirms that he achieved an S rank again. With a defeated expression, he is teleported out of the tower, powerless to do anything. The pair wait in the room, and Lee Mina says that 5 minutes have already passed. Suddenly, a blue notification screen appears right in front of them. Our protagonist bursts into the room in a blue glow, leaving the two shocked. They are left speechless because the notification appeared at the same time as him. They finally understand that the highest rank S on the 11th floor belongs to him. With a sigh, he realizes he didn't want it to come to this. Therefore, he says that the two will have to be silenced while Corsac appears behind him. With a serious look, he says he will silence them both, so his secret doesn't leak. Without a second thought, Corsac moves forward to fulfill his master's order. Our hero yells for him to just tie them both up, but the killer misunderstands everything. Suddenly, our protagonist has a terrifying vision and screams in pure terror. In his nightmare, he desperately asks who ordered such a thing to be done. He apologizes, crying upon seeing what happened to the two of them in his imagination. But it was all just a delusion, and the officers look at him, completely bewildered. They help him up because he fell to the ground and suddenly started sweating profusely. Our boy realizes he's hallucinated and tries to calm down to continue the conversation. Then he goes back to denying everything and says it was just a coincidence with another player. Jeon Gwang-il thinks the timing is too perfect, but our hero insists it wasn't him. The team leader then decides to change the subject and picks up a contract for him to sign. Our boy is shocked to see that it's an elite contract and not a general one as he requested. But Jeon Gwang-il explains that this is a special and unique case in the entire industry. It's actually an ultra-elite contract for a special-level player. The annual salary is 12 billion won, with the right to housing and maximum security. Furthermore, the contract offers immunity from the law, leaving him shocked. This is a benefit that only the #1 player in Korea has, which makes him like royalty. The agent says the nation will give everything it can, but before he can continue, he is interrupted. Our protagonist shouts no and refuses the offer immediately. The agent asks why he's refusing so vehemently, and our hero says he hates receiving attention. Because when he receives attention, he becomes completely overwhelmed and stressed, even when buying clothes. He remembers a restaurant where the owner recognized him, and because of that, he was never able to go back. The two agents realize he's an extreme introvert, while our hero thinks he's unsure of anything. Seeing the situation, the team leader decides to back down for now and agrees to a general contract. He shakes the agent's hand and thinks that an elite contract comes with a lot of responsibility. With that contract, he couldn't give up his chances of going up to the higher floors of the tower. That's why our protagonist refuses such a heavy burden and says he just wants to live a little better. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the awakened administration, the atmosphere is anything but good. The director complains to Jeon Gwang-il because the report is very different from what he expected. The boss doesn't understand how this person achieved an S rank, but the agent confirms that his personality is peculiar. He explains that our hero is one of the shyest types he has ever met in his life. That's why the director asks if they haven't made a mistake, but she says it's impossible because the time was right. The boss gets angry and says that his talent is what matters and orders him to be dragged into the elite. With a serious face, the team leader understands that he needs to be on the elite team. But at home, our hero yells that he absolutely won't go and seems quite annoyed. But in reality, he was arguing with Corsac, who apologized for having failed in the plan. Soon after, they enter the 12th floor and their mission is to defeat 20 ice weasels. He orders Corsac to fight very slowly, and the assassin responds with loyalty and enthusiasm. Our boy thinks he can trust him and believes that this will make the administration lose interest. But suddenly our hero starts freezing because of the freezing cold. He tries to hold on, but Corsac notices his face is turning pale. That's why the killer gets super worried and promises to finish everything very quickly. Our boy yells at him to slow down, but Corsac ignores him and goes on the attack. He destroys the monsters and says that the common cold is an incurable disease and that his master is in danger. Still freezing, our hero yells at his servant about the importance of absolute obedience. Even so, a system screen shows that he reached rank S++ on the 12th floor. Meanwhile, the administration agents get the news and are shocked by his speed. Back in his room, the assassin says it's warm now and that his master can relax. But the protagonist coldly dismisses him, saying he's just going to watch some television. With tears in his eyes, the young man grumbles that there's no reward for those who disobey him. Soon after, they enter the 13th floor, which is a hallway full of giant axes. At that moment, the servant carries his master in his arms, saying the place is very dangerous. With that, the assassin quickly gets through the traps and achieves another S++ rank. On the 14th floor, they find a swarm of bats, and Corsac handles it all easily. Back home, he checks his phone and sees a deposit of almost 3 million won. On top of that, the young man notices he also received 2 million from a player support fund. With a smile, he realizes he's earned over 7 million in just 14 days in the tower. The boy dreams of a 30 million won salary and decides to quit his part-time job. The next day, he summons his companion, who appears, promising loyalty as always. The servant then asks if this time he can go all out without having to hold back. The hero thinks that by now, the administration already knows everything, so it doesn't make a difference anymore. With a greedy look, he gets excited about getting more special benefits and staying safe. So, with new determination, the pair prepares to enter the tower once more. They arrive on the 15th floor, and the mission is to defeat 20 worker goblins. The assassin warns that if one goblin escapes, it will call the others, so he asks his master to hide. With a confident smile, the servant says he'll take care of everything and be right back. Hiding, the protagonist sees his companion use a stealth ability and is impressed. In the blink of an eye, the assassin charges at the goblins with incredible speed. He takes down all the enemies so fast that they don't even realize they've been defeated. After the mission, he levels up and gets another platinum emblem and some potions. With a blue flash, the pair is teleported back to the young man's small room. Back home, he opens his system inventory to claim his new rewards. With that, the young man proudly displays his 15 earned platinum emblems. A system screen appears, notifying him that he has earned a benefit for having 15 emblems. With a mischievous smile, the young man wonders what the reward will be this time. The system then reveals that he has received an item called an energy shield kit. The item is a shield that protects the user by absorbing damage, but has a cooldown time. The young man realizes this is basically a full body armor for him. And the best part is that he can use this shield in the real world too. He thinks about how much money he would get if he sold the bracelet, but hesitates. Excited, he asks Corsac if they can clear the next floor with an S++ rank. His companion says it's possible, but that he can't guarantee the top score this time. The protagonist is surprised and wonders what he should do now to continue. Meanwhile, at the administration, the chief asks how long the global announcements have stopped. The agent confirms it's been 15 days, and he believes the player is stuck on the 15th floor. Angrily, the director slams his hand on the table, lamenting that such great talent went to such a timid player. The team leader explains that the difficulty increases significantly from there, but he believes the young man hasn't given up. Just then, he gets a call and informs the chief that the protagonist is heading to the office to use the shop. This news shocks the director, who repeats the information and seems to have a major epiphany. The agent then realizes the hero was farming funds to buy items since he had no equipment. Furious with himself, the director shouts about how foolish they were for nearly criticizing the player. With that, He orders his subordinates to support the hero with very cheap items when he arrives. 15 days earlier, we see the assassin in a total panic, unable to understand his master's request. The protagonist then calmly repeats for the servant to strike him with the dagger he's holding. Desperate, the companion kneels and begs, but the young man just wants to test his new energy shield. The servant then covers his ears, saying he can't hear anything and that his master is very frustrating. Seeing that it's no use, the young man decides to do it himself and plunges the dagger into his own body. He yells out as the assassin freaks out, wanting to grab his arm, but the wound starts to heal. His companion holds him and demands that he never do that again, and the young man agrees, sending him to hunt. With that, Corsac returns to the forest and starts defeating all the monsters that appear. The entire hunt is over in less than 10 minutes, while our hero just watches from a distance. Hiding behind a bush, the young man decides it's a good opportunity to practice his skills. So he concentrates and prepares to use the technique he copied from his servant, the shadow step. With his eyes glowing, his body is enveloped in a blue aura as he activates the power. With a blue aura, he tests his new shadow step ability for the first time. Surprised by the speed, the young man finally understands what it feels like to move freely. Now he gets why his servant insisted he learn this escape technique first. But suddenly, the young man stops, startled by something hiding behind a bush. It was a lone goblin with bright red eyes, watching him intently. The creature then starts to run away, leaving our hero confused by the situation. Trembling, he wonders if the monster was hiding from his companion. Out of nowhere, the goblin lets out a desperate cry and charges to attack the protagonist. The young man quickly activates his energy shield to defend against the surprise attack. Feeling a chill, he kicks the monster away with all his strength. The goblin flies through the air and lands right in front of Corsac, who was nearby. The assassin then compliments his master's pass and easily finishes the creature. Right after, the servant flies at high speed towards the young man, shouting his name. Very concerned, he lands in front of the young man and asks if he got hurt. His companion checks him all over, while the hero assures him that everything is fine. With a scary expression, the assassin scolds him for being so bold and reckless. After 15 days, he had accumulated over 11 million in magic stones on the 15th floor. Back in the present, our hero calls the administration to visit the player's shop. To his surprise, they send a luxury limousine to pick him up from his house. The young man gets out of the car, a little shy, with all the special treatment and attention. In front of the building, the team leader greets him warmly, saying it's been a while. The young man responds to the leader and realizes he's getting super special VIP treatment. Inside, he needs to register his hand on a scanner to gain access. With the registration done, the agent informs him that he no longer needs to call, and the hero prefers to look around by himself. As soon as the doors open, the young man enters the exclusive shop for all players. The place is super luxurious, and he's impressed but wonders why it's so empty. He thinks the items are too expensive and decides to sell his magic stones first. The total sale value comes to over 11 million, and he asks if he can use the money right away. With the cash available, the attendant wishes him happy shopping, but the young man already feels exhausted. Far away, the director asks about the player, and the team leader confirms that the shop has been closed off. He also reveals that he asked for a 50% discount on everything for the young man. Back in his small room, the protagonist gets ready to test his new items. He holds his new 2 million, 1 mace and puts on his 3 million, 1 boots. The young man finds it strange, because the items are usually much more expensive, and the leader treated him specially. Then he realizes it was all special treatment, and feels overwhelmed by the situation. The young man explains that his defense is now complete, thanks to his shield and also a benefit. He had decided not to be greedy, but this new benefit is making him change his mind. The next day, he summons his servant, who asks if they are going to the 15th floor again. But the young man says no. With a smile, he realizes that the cooldown for a new summon is over. Very excited, The hero then shouts that he is finally going to summon one more person for his team. He makes a desperate prayer and prepares to use the random summon one more time. A purple portal opens, and the silhouette of a giant figure begins to emerge in the room. The light becomes very intense, and our hero and his servant are startled by what's coming. With that, a large purple energy blast destroys part of the ceiling of the small apartment. In shock, he wonders what he just summoned and worries about the rent money. From inside the portal, a huge muscular hand slowly appears. Right after, a giant foot steps on the ground, cracking the floor with the creature's weight. Finally, a giant man with tattoos emerges in the room, terrifying the young man. The brute has red eyes and a menacing look, appearing like a true monster. Out of nowhere, the assassin charges forward, yelling at the newcomer and confusing the protagonist. He delivers a full force-flying kick, landing it squarely on the new summon's face. While attacking him, the servant complains to him, and the hero wonders if the two already know each other. The giant then says the blow didn't even hurt, and that it just tickled a little. Angrily, the assassin draws his daggers and threatens the brute, saying he'll take care of him. But before he can attack, our hero desperately yells for him to stop. The young man pleads, saying a broken ceiling is enough, and the servant immediately agrees. He asks to speak with the new servant, but Corsac says the big guy is a famous idiot in the business. The barbarian disagrees and tries to prove he knows the rules, starting to recite the first principle, but he gets all mixed up on the second, and when it's time to say the third principle, he completely forgets. The assassin gets annoyed, and the hero sees in the status that the new servant is just an R rank, the lowest of all. The protagonist tries to interview the new summon, but the giant doesn't remember anything, not even his own name. To understand better, our hero decides to check the detailed information, and his eyes begin to glow. He then realizes he's being pulled into the barbarian's memories. Just like with the assassin, he then appears floating in a beautiful, green landscape and wonders where he is. In the vision, he sees the giant in his peaceful past, admiring a butterfly, as he was a pure soul. But the piece is interrupted when a huge plains wolf suddenly appears to attack him. With his incredible strength, the barbarian treats the wolves as if they were just puppies to play with. At that moment, a blond man with a suspicious smile appears, watching the scene from a distance. The man introduces himself as Arius, but the big guy can't even remember his own name. The vision then shifts to a large crystal structure in a very dark and mysterious place. It turns out the barbarian was tricked by a false hero to serve as a shield against a hydra. He fights bravely and rips off the monster's heads, without even noticing his body was dissolving. Driven only by the desire to protect his companions, he ended up being betrayed and mocked by them. Seeing his skeleton fall apart, the hero finally understands why he is a human shield. Moved, he finds it a great injustice and doesn't care that the giant is a bit slow. Back in the present, the young man welcomes the new servant and invites him to climb the tower. He decides to start by giving the brute a name and offers two options, but he's undecided. After some thought, the giant finally makes up his mind and says his name will now be Gobang. The young man promises to make him happy and asks if Gobang trusts him, receiving a positive answer. With that, the hero announces that they are a team of 3, which leaves the assassin completely shocked. The assassin then has a brilliant idea, and it seems his calculation is complete. With that, he agrees to train the giant, and the protagonist gets excited to go to the 16th floor. The servant gets irritated with Gobang for copying him, and the young man thinks about his disastrous team of misfits. Then the trio enters the tower, and the system announces that their abilities have been enhanced for the new floor. The mission is to defeat 30 scout goblins, and Corsac gives instructions for his master to protect himself. He warns that the enemies use poison darts and can attack by surprise at any moment. At that moment, a poison dart is aimed right at our hero's head. Hiding, a goblin prepares to shoot the dart with its powerful blowgun, but the assassin is faster and manages to stop the attack, just in time to save his master. Immediately after, dozens of goblins jump from the trees, revealing it was an ambush. The the servant tells the protagonist to fall back and starts dodging a shower of poisoned darts. The young man realizes they were waiting and that there are more than 50 enemies around. Desperate, he yells for Gobang to get in front and block all the monsters' attacks. With his eyes glowing, the giant prepares to show off all his power as a human shield. His foot is then enveloped in a powerful energy as he gets ready to jump. Gobang leaps high into the air and comes down like a meteor of light towards the frightened goblins. The creatures are mesmerized by the light, while the assassin finds himself surrounded by other enemies. Just then, Corsac looks up and sees the giant shadow of his new companion covering him. With a powerful impact, Gobang smashes the ground and sends all the goblins flying. Even the servant is caught in the blast and flies away irritated, cursing the barbarian for his recklessness. Hiding, the protagonist is impressed, as the goblins are no match for his new servant's weight. The remaining monsters then try to attack the giant with their blowguns but seem nervous. Countless darts hit the brute, who says it doesn't hurt and just tickles. With that, he follows orders and charges at the enemies to finish them all at once. The young man thinks the barbarian should be SR or even SR rank and wonders if he's R rank for being slow. Back home, they celebrate with several boxes of fried chicken as a reward for the victory. Gobang happily devours the food and says this kitchen thing is very tasty. The assassin gets annoyed with the mistake, and the protagonist thinks his team can't get along. Suddenly, the giant says his master is a good person, leaving the young man speechless. He even offers his life for more kitchen, but the young man says he's the one who needs help. Just then, Corsac hits the barbarian and yells that the food's name is chicken, not kitchen. The hero complains about the servant's attitude, who apologizes, saying the big guy needed to be taught. The next day, the trio enters the 17th floor of the tower for another dangerous challenge. Arriving on level 17, the young man feels a wave of power he can barely control. He feels his inner wild stallion awakening and thinks he can start fighting now. But his companions tell him to stay back, because level 20 is when players get overconfident. The mission is to defeat 30 goblin warriors, and a horde with dozens of them appears. The young man realizes the pressure is immense, and that the enemies are good at battle tactics. He remembers the strategy he saw, which was to retreat to the safe zone and wait a bit. Then, he was supposed to go back and lure the goblins in small groups of 3 to defeat them slowly. But our hero thinks that with his new servant, he doesn't need any complicated strategy. With a confident smile, he just points forward and tells the giant to charge ahead with everything. The barbarian lets out a roar of power, and the young man is already dreaming of easily passing the 20th floor. Then he orders his servant to finish them all and wonders what the next reward will be. With that, Gobang is enveloped in a yellow energy aura and yells loudly before attacking. He runs towards the goblin warriors, who are paralyzed with fear by his charge. The monster leader then shouts an attack order for his soldiers to prepare. The goblins quickly form a barrier of shields and spears to stop the giant's advance. Even so, the brute runs fearlessly towards the wall of sharp spears. He breaks through the enemy's defense with ease and sends them all flying with his power. The creatures fly in all directions, as if they were rag dolls against the barbarian's strength. The young man is left wide-eyed with a silly grin, thinking his servant's performance is insane. He then compares the scene to thousands of bicycles trying to stop a war tank. A system screen appears and announces that he achieved an S++ rank on the 17th floor. The protagonist is amazed by the result, while his first companion watches the scene. The assassin cries with emotion for his master's success, who now has a much stronger team. Shortly after, they arrive on the 18th floor to face the fearsome goblin assassins. Without hesitation, the young man sends Gobang ahead, and the giant immediately goes on the attack. Just then, the enemies use a stealth ability and become almost invisible in the forest. Gobang then attacks, and several goblins appear clinging to his body, leaving him very confused. The goblins cling to the giant's body, who is left confused about what is happening. Our hero watches the scene, a bit awkwardly, not knowing what to do. With that, Gobang gets annoyed and calls the assassins cowards while trying to shake them off. Suddenly, a loud and mocking laugh echoes throughout the forest from the trees. It was the assassin who appears, boasting and saying he will show how to clear a floor with class. He then says the goblin's stealth is nothing and activates his shadow step ability. In the blink of an eye, Corsac begins to defeat the enemies with incredible speed and elegance. The protagonist just watches his servant's performance with a surprised look on his face, but with a malicious smile. He reveals that the assassin fell right into his trap. The young man explains that he stimulated the servant's competitive spirit, which was losing its shine to Gobang. Now he wants both of them to work hard to get more emblems and benefits for him. Holding his mace, he comments that he is already around level 18 and feels stronger. A powerful aura then begins to emanate from his back as he prepares to fight. With that, the young man unleashes his power, the release of the wild stallion, and transforms. With his new horse face, he remembers that he checked the guide's information before entering. The guide said that the goblin's stealth is low level, so he can detect them. He feels confident because he practiced his shadow step a lot on the 15th floor. Then the hero uses his ability to sneak up on one of the goblins. But as he lands on the ground, he ends up stepping awkwardly and loses his balance a bit. He then screams in desperation as he's losing his balance right at the moment of attack. Still off balance, he ends up accidentally hitting the goblin's head with his mace. With the monster defeated, the system shows that he has already eliminated 10 of the 30 assassins. He then tries to hide his nervousness and says that everything went as planned in the hunt. But suddenly, another goblin jumps from the trees and charges to attack him from behind. Meanwhile, the assassin continues his elegant hunt and has already racked up 25 takedowns. With only 3 left for the mission, he prepares to finish the job quickly. Just then, Gobang appears with his fists ready to smash, surprising the other servant. The giant then uses a powerful area attack, slamming both hands on the ground. With the impact, the last 3 goblins are thrown far away, and the mission is completed. The hero asks the brute to keep helping, but Corsac gets annoyed that he's in the way. The assassin then gets confused and wonders where his master went in the middle of the fight. A flash of blue and purple energy lights up the forest, indicating that something happened. The protagonist dodges a goblin attack with impressive speed. He touches his head, relieved that his energy shield saved him from a dangerous attack. On the ground, the young man sees another enemy advancing on him with a dagger in hand. He wonders if it's the adrenaline, but his senses seem to be much sharper. With that, the goblin's movements seem to be in slow motion for our hero. His eyes glow intensely as he feels the whole world has slowed down around him. He then uses a red energy attack and destroys both monsters at once. The system rewards him with an S++ rank, and his servant runs towards him, calling his name. With a smile, the young man realizes he landed the final blow on the monster. At that, the assassin kneels in despair that his master stole the final takedown. Meanwhile, at the administration, an agent is shocked by the new record on the 18th floor. The director then celebrates the achievement and says the mysterious player is unstoppable. They discuss revealing his identity, but the agents think it would be too dangerous. With that, the team leader classifies him as a top-class player who needs special care. The news spreads, and a newspaper reports on the record of 18 consecutive floors. Because of this, the entire nation becomes curious to know who the mysterious player is. Back in his room, the servant sighs dramatically, worried about something. The young man asks what's wrong, and his companion says everything is happening too fast. He then explains that the speed at which his master is awakening his talent is frightening, but the protagonist plays dumb and points to himself, asking if he's talking about him. With a goofy smile, the young man continues to pretend and says his servant is just joking. Corsac insists it's not a joke and recalls the perfect move he used in the fight. The assassin says it was such a good move that even he would have trouble copying it. That's why he fears his master will become overconfident and put himself in danger in the tower. The young man tries to calm him down, promising he won't do anything dangerous and will just hunt a little. Although suspicious, the servant eventually agrees with a look of pure concern. Seeing the reaction, the protagonist smiles suspiciously, with a bad feeling in the air. This drives the assassin to total despair, as he senses his master is about to cause huge trouble. Gobang holds the servant, who is thrashing around in tears, and calls him an idiot for grumbling. Angrily, the assassin punches the giant, saying he's going to cook him in a pot. At that, the brute falls backward and knocks the refrigerator over onto the room's floor. The young man panics upon seeing his precious refrigerator being destroyed in the fight. He then yells for them to stop breaking his house and dismisses them on the spot. Heartbroken, he mourns for his kimchi that his mother gave him, which has spilled. To clear his head, he decides that the next day he will visit his parents. The following morning, the young man climbs the stairs of the building where his family currently lives. Arriving at the apartment, he opens the door and announces that their son has finally arrived. From inside, a voice greets him and invites him to come in and stay for a while. He sees his sick father in bed, while his mother scolds him for not visiting more often. The father tries to get up, but the mother stops him, and the hero helps put him back in bed. The young man then asks about his brother, and the mother says he went to buy tofu and will be back soon. The table is set with a delicious stew that his mother prepared for the family lunch. He asks if the family is in trouble, but his parents ask him not to worry. With that, the young man decides to test their reaction and says it would be good to have an awakening. His father stares at him in surprise, and the young man gets nervous, thinking he was too direct, but his father and brother burst out laughing, saying he's too much of a coward for the tower. His mother asks about his job, and he says it's his day off, but thinks to himself that he already quit. She notices the lie in his expression, and the young man denies everything, becoming super embarrassed. His mother then says she trusts her son with a gentle smile on her face, but she warns him to never use private loans again, and this sends him into a panic. He remembers the loan sharks and asks his mother what happened to her job. She explains that she was let go for standing up to a difficult customer and not taking any nonsense. The young man then remembers his father passionately, declaring his love for his mother in the past. A funny family tree shows that he and his brother inherited their father's beta genes. With that, he decides to tell them about his awakening later and enjoys the moment with his mother. As he's leaving, his brother stops him and hands him an envelope with money for their parents. The protagonist turns a bit confused by the gesture and wonders what he wants. He thinks the boy is embarrassed because of the college money he paid for. The hero then tries to comfort him, saying he understands how he feels at that moment, but the younger brother takes the chance and asks for his share of the allowance with a smile. Annoyed, the young man transfers 500,000 won to the freeloader and tells him not to waste it. Shortly after, he appears in front of the Awakened Management Office in Seoul. The young man says that seeing his family has made him more determined to take the tower seriously. He remembers that he should have called ahead, but doesn't want to meet the agent again, so he goes in. Thinking about the stronger monsters, he decides he needs more protection besides the shield. Then, at the player's shop, a saleswoman offers him a super shiny golden shield. The price of the item is 100 million won, which leaves our hero completely shocked. He gets nervous because the store is crowded. Unlike the last time he was there, the saleswoman then shows him a round shield made of adamantite that is self-repair. He tries it on and likes it a lot because it matches his mace, and decides to buy it for 40 million. With the payment made, he finally buys the shield and feels relieved with the purchase. The young man realizes that talking to the saleswoman was harder than fighting goblins. Ready to go home, he takes a deep breath, relieved to have finished his shopping. But a man approaches him and asks if he awakened recently, leaving him confused. The stranger introduces himself as Koi Ho-sik and says he is also a player like him. He explains that he is on the 30th floor, and the protagonist feels intimidated by his level. The young man finds the man very kind and outgoing for offering to help with tips. Choi Ho-suk says goodbye, and the hero feels a bit uncomfortable with the interaction. He feels envious of the other player's social skills and wonders if he has a girlfriend. Back in his room, the young man prepares for the next challenge in the Dark Tower. He looks at his status and sees that he is at level 19, so he can go to the next floor. But first, he decides he needs to reach an agreement with his servant about safety. The assassin is summoned and seems to be feeling sick from something strange. The protagonist then shows off his new shield, and the servant complains that he is starting to enjoy the fight. He says the previous summoner also talked about safety, and the young man promises to be careful. The servant asks him not to charge forward, and the young man agrees with a somewhat suspicious smile. He promises to sacrifice his servants to escape if things get rough, and Corsac agrees. But when it's time to go to the tower, the assassin smells something horrible and feels nauseous. The protagonist offers dumplings to his servant, who is very happy with the special treatment. With a huge smile, he gets ready to eat and thanks his master for the gift. While he's eating, the young man asks if the assassin has any hard feelings, and he denies it with his mouth full. Suddenly, the servant warns that there is someone outside with a strong intent to harm. The young man is shocked by the news, and someone starts knocking on the door, calling for him. He then tells his companion to hide, and quickly activates his energy shield for protection. With that, the door's peeful is destroyed by a strange device that goes through the wood. The object falls to the floor, and our hero watches the scene crouched down, not understanding what is happening. At that moment, an armed man with a pistol opens the door and greets him sinisterly. The young man is completely paralyzed with fear upon seeing the armed man in his small room. He then recognizes the intruder as the guy he met at the player's shop earlier. The aggressor threatens him and tells him to open his inventory before his head gets turned into a sieve. The man then presses the weapon against the young man's forehead, who is terrified by the situation. But the thug notices a dark aura behind the young man and thinks this is basically a lost cause. Even so, he yells, thinking the young man is weak and will hand everything over with a little pressure. To show he's not playing around, the man hits his own head with the butt of the weapon. But suddenly, the assassin appears behind him with a gleaming dagger, and the intruder is surprised. With a swift blow, the servant knocks out the thug, who falls unconscious on the apartment floor. Our hero is left speechless, unable to believe what just happened right in front of him. Very excited, he praises his companion for the great work, and the assassin gets a bit flustered. He is relieved that his servant only stunned the thug and didn't eliminate him. The protagonist then wonders if the intruder is an item broker, a type of criminal. Brokers are people who attack players outside the tower where they are like normal people. He remembers the agent explaining that the elite team offers personal protection to players. The young man thinks that if it weren't for his summoning ability, he would surely be done for. The servant starts tying a red ribbon, and the young man realizes how powerful his ability is. He tells his companion to leave the thug there for the police to handle. At the administration, the director is furious to learn that the protagonist went to the shop again. The team leader informs him that he bought a small hand shield and the chief size. They speculate that he is a close combat player because of the mace and shield. The agent then decides he will give a full set of armor to the young man as a gift, but he receives a call from the police's player task force and excuses himself to answer. Upon hearing the news on the phone, the team leader is completely shocked and speechless. He then runs out of the office and gets in his car to go to the scene. The agent runs up the building stairs, worried about what might have happened. With a determined look, he thinks about what he will do if something bad happened to the young man. At the house, the police arrest the intruder, who complains of a headache and plays the victim. The thug accuses the protagonist of abducting him, and the officer decides to take them both in. The young man despairs at the idea of being arrested and imagines himself in a guide for failures in prison. But the team leader arrives just in time and stops the officers from taking the young man away. The intruder recognizes the agent and tries to play the victim, but the protagonist is confused. With that, the team leader approaches, and the thug begs for help, saying he was saved. But the agent hits him with a powerful punch and tells him to stop the blatant lies. The criminal falls to the ground with a bleeding nose, not understanding why he was hit. The agent then accuses him of trying to harm a player and revokes his registration on the spot. The agent ignores the thug's pleas, who becomes desperate with the whole situation. He warns that the intelligence service will take care of him, and the man is terrified by the news. The criminal begs for mercy, but the leader calls him a repeat offender and promises to investigate. Angrily, he says he doubts any lawyer would agree to take a case like his. The agent then tells the officers that even if he escapes, he will always return to the same place. With the thug taken away, he asks the young man if he was hurt, with a frightening expression. The protagonist is a bit scared by his look, but the agent is just concerned. With that, the leader bows and apologizes, promising that this will not happen again. He realizes he can't postpone it any longer and decides he needs to protect the young man at all costs. The next day, the servant asks what happened, and the hero tells him the thug was arrested. The assassin then wants to know where the detention center is, but the young man forbids him from going. Shortly after, he summons Gobang, who is overjoyed to receive 5 stars for the first time. The trio then enters the 19th floor, and the mission is to defeat 30 goblin shamans. The enemies are not that strong and only use weak curses and fire arrows. Without a worry, the giant charges forward, while the shamans prepare a dark attack. The giant then takes a deep breath and prepares to use one of his special abilities. With a deafening shout, he unleashes a sonic shockwave that shatters the shaman's magic. The protagonist is impressed, as his servant managed to nullify the curse with a barbaric method. The assassin then flies towards Gobang and seems to have a plan for the battle. He tells the giant they need to clear the floor as quickly as possible, and the brute agrees. With that, the servant duo charges forward together to defeat all the remaining enemies. The slender servant attacks with his dagger, while the big one uses his brute force to crush the goblins. Seeing the scene, the young man grabs his mace and shield and prepares to join the fight. But a system screen announces that the 19th floor mission is already complete. The young man is surprised by the speed and sees his servants standing victorious in the forest. The assassin boasts, and the protagonist realizes he finished everything quickly to leave him out. The next day, the trio enters the 20th floor of the tower, which is known to be very difficult. The servant warns that the place is dangerous because all types of goblins appear there. Gobang then advises his master to wait in a safe place while they take care of everything. The mission is to defeat 100 goblins and 1 hobgoblin, and the hero realizes he'll be left out. The protagonist then orders the giant to draw the enemy's attention so he can attack. Several goblin shamans and scouts suddenly appear, ready for the approaching battle. In addition to them, a group of goblin warriors and assassins also prepares to attack. The assassins use their stealth and hide in the forest for an ambush. Seeing the enemies move, the servant refuses to stand still and wait for the attack. Then the dynamic duo starts running through the forest at high speed, leaving only a trail of blue light wherever they go. At that moment, the big tattooed guy gets a fright when he realizes someone is jumping on him with an intense blue glow. With that, our hero appears flying through the air with a determined look while a powerful purple aura envelopes his entire body. But the red-haired assassin panics completely and starts screaming desperately when he sees the madness the boy is doing. Then the boy jumps so high that he looks like a rocket, dodging the goblin's arrows, while the giant watches everything from below.